Hello, I'm Jim Patrick from the Yuma, Maine Library. August 2020 marks the 100th anniversary of the ratification of the 19th Amendment to the U.S. Constitution. In 1916, Alice Burke and Nell Richardson contributed to the cause of women's suffrage by enduring a marathon automobile tour of the United States. Mara Rockcliffe's children's book recounting this real-life adventure is one of 3 books recently distributed to libraries by the American Library Association and the Women's Suffrage Centennial Commission. This presentation will fill in some of the background to this amazing story. The National American Women's Suffrage Association sponsored the cross-country automobile trip of 2 of its members, Alice Burke and Nell Richardson. The travelers were to give suffrage speeches along the way, as well as recruiting women to participate in marches at the 1916 National Political Conventions in St. Louis and Chicago. At the time of the trip, only 11 states had granted the vote to women. One of these states was Arizona, whose voters approved women's suffrage by a ballot initiative in 1912, the first year of statehood for Arizona. On April 6, 1916, Alice Burke and Nell Richardson were given a rousing send-off in New York City. In the photo, Carrie Chapman Catt, the president of the Women's Suffrage Association, is christening the automobile with a champagne bottle filled with gasoline. Reporters noted that the car's radiator was dented by the force of the blow. Alice Burke and Nell Richardson had been active in the Women's Suffrage Association for a few years prior to their trip. On many occasions, they literally spoke from soapboxes on New York City street corners about women's suffrage. And in 1915, they traveled by automobile for a 2-month tour of the state of New York. We don't know too much about their personal backgrounds, but the success of their journey confirms that they were tireless and fearless individuals. And of critical importance to their success, Alice happened to be an expert auto mechanic. The ladies dubbed their touring car the Golden Flyer. Black and white photos don't convey the dramatic effect the golden yellow vehicle must have had on observers as it rolled into their towns. Yellow had been adopted by many suffragists as the symbolic color of their movement, and when they gave speeches, Alice and Nell were often dressed in yellow. Almost as remarkable as the marathon automobile trip itself was the travelers' ability to pack so many items into such a small vehicle. These photos show Saxon roadsters similar to the Golden Flyer. The bottom photo from an Indiana Jones movie shows just how small the Saxon was, but according to newspaper accounts, the ladies traveled with all of the listed items. The Saxon Motor Car Company, which operated in Detroit from 1913 to 1922, loaned one of its 4-cylinder roadsters to Alice and Nell. The success of the trip gave the Saxon Company a windfall of positive publicity, which was used in advertising campaigns aimed at female consumers. Alice Burke noted that the Saxon's breakdowns on the trip were mostly caused by poor road conditions that were common in 1916. The travelers encountered no major engine trouble, but they did experience a handful of tire punctures and a broken axle. In addition to the items mentioned earlier, the Saxon Roadster also transported a black kitten who was also named Saxon for the entire trip. Newspaper accounts frequently highlighted the cat who had reportedly been handed to the ladies by a well-wisher at their New York send-off. Illustrator Hadley Hooper's map shows the ladies at the halfway point about to enter the state of Oregon. The blue and red lines show the route taken by the Golden Flyer as it ultimately amassed 10,700 miles over 178 days. One reason the road trip was scheduled from April to September was to avoid harsh winter weather. Nonetheless, the travelers had to endure snow between Philadelphia and Baltimore, and then again a few weeks later in the mountains of Washington State. When the ladies got to Gulfport, Mississippi, the roads were not passable due to mud. The Saxon automobile had to be temporarily transported ahead by boat. Nell, Alice, and the kitten took the train and met up with their car in New Orleans. According to Alice Burke, when the women traveled along the Mexican border in Texas and New Mexico, They encountered gunfire between Pancho Villa's rebel troops and U.S. soldiers. Yes, Alice and Nell stopped in Yuma. They were originally expected here on May 25th, but they did not arrive until May 30th. Mara Rockcliffe's book indicates that the ladies got lost for days in Arizona. This must have happened between Phoenix and Yuma, because in Phoenix, Alice Burke commented that Arizona roads are the best we have journeyed over so far. The travelers reached Yuma on Decoration Day, as Memorial Day used to be called, although some accounts note that Yuma held a parade for Alice and Nell. In fact, that day's preparedness parade had been planned for several weeks, but the timing of the women's arrival did allow them to talk to large crowds on Yuma's Main Street. Prior to 1925, automobile travel from Yuma to the Imperial Valley was treacherous, particularly on the stretch of one-lane plank road. Since Alice and Nell headed to San Diego from Yuma, it is likely that they bumped their way along the old plank road. Alice and Nell typically spoke to audiences directly from their automobile. Since they often encountered hecklers and naysayers, it was necessary to carry themselves with strength and confidence. For example, while speaking to a crowd in Minneapolis, Alice Burke bluntly stated, "You men should read editorial pages rather than sports columns to vote intelligently." The New York Times reported on the reception given Alice and Nell when they arrived back in New York City on September 30th, 1916. According to the article, the reason their little yellow car had a worn look was that it was now covered by autographs of audience members from along the tour, as well as slogans such as "Eat Raisins in California." The report also mentioned that the lady's kitten, Saxon, was now nearly fully grown. Alice Burke and Nell Richardson continued working in the women's suffrage movement until the ratification of the 19th Amendment, which occurred on August 18, 1920, when Tennessee voters gave their approval. The two women went their separate ways and led quiet lives until Alice's death in 1948 and Nell's death the following year. Nell got married twice and had a son, while Alice spent her later years raising Scotty dogs. Thanks to Mara Rockcliffe's children's book, Alice and Nell's unique contribution to the women's suffrage struggle can now be rediscovered by a new generation of young people.